welcome back to Be Made Whole TV. I'm so glad that you are back to visit. If this is your first time, welcome. I hope you can hang out with me for a little bit. And so I am introducing another episode of Wisdom Chat Wednesdays, and today's topic is going to be a little interesting, a little touchy, because we are all in some kind of relationship. We were created to be in relationship with God and with one another. And the truth of the matter is, it gets a little tricky here and there. And I wanted to touch specifically on something that I've been hearing a lot about recently. And probably for a while it's been around, but it's just a known language now, where we are relating or talking about people as toxic people or being in toxic relationships. And so I want to touch a little bit about that before I touch on what is setting up boundaries and what does that look like in the midst of toxicity. Today specifically, I want to address a scripture that I have read a lot about, but it's kind of challenging as you are faced with relationships and people that just make it very hard for you to, very hard for you to want to be around. Very challenging. You just kind of not want to have to deal with certain people. That's just the truth of the matter. No matter how kind-hearted you are, no matter how sweet you are, no matter how loving you are, no matter how much God you have and how much scripture you know, and they're going to test your ability to love God and love your neighbor as yourself and not choke your neighbor. But you still have to walk in love, still walk in peace and joy, and exhibiting the fruit of the Spirit. And that's one of the things that I live by. Now, I can't speak, like I said last week, for everybody, but I can certainly speak for myself, where I challenge myself to still extend love in a way that I am able to the capacity that I can, because at the end of the day, I am not God. Okay, I'm still very much human. I still make mistakes, and I can still behave in a way that's not necessarily the best way. I'm not going to get it right every single time. So I want to talk about the scripture, Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, and it says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself." As it relates to people that we have challenges with, it is important to remember that they are still human, they are still loved by God. Christ died on the cross for them, and like I said, that's according to my faith, according to what I believe, according to the purpose for my life, which is to love God and to love my neighbor as myself. So how do I regard someone and value someone above myself, love them as myself, see them beyond their challenges or the things that just rub against us and the things that we disagree with? How do we still show love to people that we are capped at in terms of patience or ability to show love in fruitful ways? And I'm careful with the topic of calling people toxic, because if I'm going to go along with what Philippians 2 and 3 says, that I don't use what I know and the challenges that we have to destroy them as people. Why do I say that? Because the truth of the matter is, as challenging as that person is to me, I am challenging to somebody else. I am challenging. The way that I operate can really rub against somebody else because of the way that I am, because of my personality, the way that I think, the way that I approach certain things can be very problematic to somebody that has a different kind of personality or approach. So I can be a challenge to somebody else. So what I have learned to focus on is not on a person being toxic, but rather the relationship or the connection being toxic. And I remember specifically thinking about electricity and how, when somebody is electrocuted, it's not because electricity itself in and of itself is bad, because the truth of the matter is we need electricity in order to give power to light and other appliances that we need in the house. However, when we try to plug in to something that does not have the correct wattage or the correct source in order for us to connect into, then that can cause an electrocution, which then in turn is harmful. So the plug in and of itself, the outlet in and of itself, or the source which we're trying to connect, is not that it's bad, but when you connect the two, it is not going to work properly and cause damage. This is just a bad situation, or this is just not working, or it once worked but it no longer works, then we are able to love people better and be intentional about the way in which we love them. Now, with that being said, like Proverbs 4:23 says, guard your heart above all things, because from it comes the life, the rivers of life. Things flow out of your heart. What's in your heart? Where your heart is, there your treasure is also. The things that are out of you, out of the abundance of the heart, your mouth speaks. So how do we guard our hearts from damaging relationships or damaging situations and people? Because not that they're bad and we're going to treat them as bad people, but we recognize that this relationship is not going to work. This connection is toxic. How do I set up boundaries around that? How do I manage that in a loving way? And for people that have a hard time with setting boundaries or having boundaries, they typically have a problem with people that have boundaries. So what about boundaries? What about setting that up, and how do we do that in a way that is still loving, but at the same time it is protecting and guarding our hearts? This is one of the most challenging things to achieve, one of the challenging things to stick to, specifically for people that love intentionally, people that care about people, people that care about other people's feelings and aren't necessarily confrontational, but at the same time they're aware of their limitations and their capacity. So let's talk toxic. Let's talk boundaries. How do you feel about that? Where are you in that space? Do you find yourself needing to set up boundaries? Have you been called a toxic person, or do you call people toxic? Where are you in that framework? And would love to chat more about it. So make sure you meet me tonight at 9 p.m. DM me, email me any questions that you have. Would love to hear from you. Talk to you soon. Love y'all. God bless you. And here we go with Wisdom Chat Wednesdays.